Hello and welcome back to a special video. If you don't know me, I'm Maria Riegger, your resident Gemini, and this is Positive Parenting with Astrology. This video is a response to a reel I posted last week, I think on Thursday. The purpose of the reel was to provide responses parents can use to kids instead of, I can't afford this. And the idea is to help parents find the words to articulate their financial boundaries. A lot of you gave me a lot of heat for that reel, and I find this very interesting. I'm sensing a lot of pain, shame, anger, and some insecurity regarding this topic of finances in general, and kids, and financial boundaries. I would like to address a few things because, unfortunately, and this is why I do not like reels, because they just don't give you enough time to explain the context of what you are communicating in light of this kind of overarching strategy, right? So first, I want to point out I am not suggesting at all that parents should not spend money on their children. To the contrary, it is the responsibility of parents to provide for their kids. That includes material comfort. That includes clothes. And kids should, by the way, have a say in what kind of clothes they wear, especially as kids get older, middle schoolers and high schoolers. When social belonging and fitting in is so important, they should absolutely get a say in the clothes and shoes they wear. Yes, parents have a responsibility to provide for those things. Parents, in my opinion, have a responsibility to provide for extracurricular activities, to pay to encourage kids in their hobbies, encourage them in pursuing other activities they're interested in, encourage them to explore the world, pay for travel if that's something that's important to you, things like that. Parents should absolutely buy gifts for kids, for birthdays, for holidays, maybe to celebrate something or mark a special occasion. Absolutely. I am not suggesting otherwise. What I have observed over the last decade is it is easier than ever to spend money and buy things. We are constantly bombarded with ads. And yes, these marketers target children because they know they're going to go nag their parents for things. It is easier than ever to spend money. And what I am observing is that parents are having a hard time saying no to their kids. And it comes from a good place. We want to provide for our kids. We want them to have more things than we had as kids, right? Clearly. But I'm seeing us just accumulating a bunch of stuff. And I'm wondering if it's partly because parents have a really hard time articulating these financial boundaries to kids, especially when kids are constantly bombarded with messaging about cool new things to buy. And I know because I have observed it that many of you are experiencing your kids nagging you constantly for things to buy. And I would like to know how you deal with that. I also want to address what the problem is with saying to kids, I can't afford that. When we say to our kids, I can't afford that, or no, we can't afford that, when they ask us for something, to buy something, we are communicating a permanent state of lack, not a momentary state of lack. We can't afford this. I can't afford this. That conveys a permanent state of lack and a deep financial insecurity about spending. And kids, as I say frequently on this channel, kids are internalizing what they experience from parents. So kids will over time internalize that statement about being, about lack, permanent lack, and carry it with them into adulthood. And I have observed that leads to two different main dynamics. One is that kids find when they get older and become adults and have jobs, they find it very difficult to step out of that permanent state of lack because they have internalized it as their way of being, number one. And another dynamic that I observe less frequently, but I still observe it, is kids grow up into adults who do end up with high incomes because they want to guard against that lack that was communicated to them throughout their childhood. However, despite having maybe a high investment portfolio or a high income, they find it very difficult to spend money on anything. And maybe their partners and their kids are suffering because they don't get these opportunities to travel, to pursue hobbies, things like this, because that parent is so fixated on saving money because they're so insecure about not having money, right? So either dynamic is harmful to relationships, and both dynamics are not healthy. There's another reason why parents say, I can't afford it, because it quickly shuts down communication and curiosity. I can't afford it. So there's no point in arguing because we just can't afford it. We don't have the money. Now, one of the developmental needs of school age children is curiosity encouragement. Okay. And a lot of parents will shut down the questions right away, not just about spending and money, but in general. Why? Kids might ask why. Well, I don't have time because. And what happens over time is you shut down that communication, you shut down the curiosity, and then kids stop being curious. They stop taking an interest in learning. They stop asking questions. And then when kids are older, teenagers, young adults, we wonder why they lack motivation. Okay. So that's another reason parents use this phrase. It shuts down communication and curiosity so the parents don't have to deal with further questioning. And I don't necessarily fault parents for that. They may be in a position where they just don't have the energy to engage in debate. They may be in a very tough situation, a tough patch, a tough period in life where they cannot spend the money and they don't have the energy because of work and other obligations to explain why. Okay. I get it. But that is another reason why parents use that phrase. So I want to expound a little bit on what I said in that reel, which is some phrases to use instead of we can't afford that. You can say, I cannot buy that this week. I cannot buy that right now. That communicates that you're not going to do it. However, it's a momentary thing. And kids are less likely to internalize that statement as a permanent sense of lack because it is momentary. Well, because this week we had this, or this, month we have this, so we can't do it right now. Or we can't do it yet. That those phrases convey that this is a temporary thing. This is not a permanent state of lack. Now, the phrases I used in the video, no, I choose not to spend my money on that. No, I don't think that's a good use of my money, or I don't think that would be useful to you. I don't think it would be helpful to you either for me to spend my money on that. Those phrases convey autonomy, decision making. I'm the earner. I work hard to have this money. I make the decisions about how to spend it ultimately. That also sends a message to your kids that hopefully they will internalize that autonomy and decision making, and they will grow up and then use those phrases with other people who may feel entitled to their money. Unfortunately, the world is full of toxic people looking to take advantage of you and your kids when they are older, okay? When you're not around to help them. Internalizing these autonomy oriented messages will hopefully help your kids and give them the words to articulate and those boundaries. Another thing you can do when your kids ask you for stuff that you don't want to buy is, I can't get that right now, or I'm not going to buy that right now. Put it on your list of things you want to buy. Kids are usually very impulsive. They see stuff and they want to buy it, right? So sometimes they forget the next day or the next week or the next month what they wanted, right? This is how they are developmentally, depending on the age of the child and developmental state. It could be very impulsive. So that's one of the reasons marketers appeal to kids, because they know they make impulse buys and enact the parents to make impulse buys. You can encourage your children to write it on a list. Give your kids the responsibility for maintaining a list of the things they want to spend it on. You can tell them, hey, that's something maybe you could save up for if it's something you really want. You can save your allowance, or you can save from whatever jobs that you do. That encourages them to think about how I can afford this. Not an automatic sense of lack, but how I can afford this, what I can do. That encourages them to at least think and use some critical thinking skills about look at how much this costs. How much do I need to buy this? How many hours of work will this take me to have this money to buy this thing? Is it worth it? These are all skills that will benefit them as adults. Now, you'll notice that these phrases also take more effort because they respond to curiosity, and they usually lead to some back and forth. And when your kids are ready and when you have the time, you can sit down and talk to them about this more in detail and guide them through the budgeting and the financial literacy skills. So part of this equation is having an abundance mindset. More is possible. And the other part of this equation is having the financial boundaries and the structure. We have a certain income. Most people, right, don't have a limited income, unless you're Jeff Bezos, right? We have limited incomes, and we have certain expenditures. So if we're spending more than our income every month, we're going to run into trouble. How many adults do you know who finance their lifestyles through debt? How much does that debt cost them? How many families do you know where adult children in their 20s and 30s are living at home? Why are they living at home? I could not wait to get out of my mother's house. I could not wait. I was champing at the bit, and all my friends were the same. I cannot fathom a 25 or 30 or 35-year-old adult wanting to live with their parents. I personally cannot fathom it. But why? What is one reason why they may be living at home? They are comfortable. They are financially taken care of. Maybe their parents did not exercise financial boundaries with them. So if we do not communicate the financial boundaries, if we do not give kids a structure and teach them financial literacy, they're not going to know the parameters in which they can operate. And they're not going to think about strategies to increase their finances, increase their income, strategies to be able to buy the things that they want, strategies to avoid the rising cost of debt. So what I have been seeing the past decade, and I definitely saw it last week with my reel, with your comments, is there's a lot of pain around this topic. There's a lot of anger around this topic. And I'm very curious about this because I'm finding that a lot of moms don't like to talk about money. They don't like to normalize talking about financial literacy at home. They don't like to talk about money. They're intimidated by investing, or for whatever reason, they don't like to talk about it. I don't know. If you've watched this channel for any length of time, you know I am a huge proponent of investing, personal finance, of living beneath your means, retiring early if that is important to you. It is possible. One of the great things about investing is you don't need a lot of money to invest. In fact, when your kids show an interest in it, you can help them spend a few bucks to invest in Robinhood or some stock, or one share of an ETF or a stock. It doesn't take much, and it's a really good lesson for them to learn about passive income. So I want to know from you, what do you tell your kids when they make these repeated requests for purchases? Like, are your kids gamers? Are they, if they're gamers, I guarantee a lot of them are making these repeated requests for in-game currency, Robux, V-Bucks, whatever else, Clash Royale, these mobile games. I know they're making repeated requests. How are you dealing with that? What are you telling them? Are you giving them an allowance, and then when that money is spent, that's it? Or are you handling it some other way? And one of the phrases I used in that reel was a phrase that can be used in a situation where your kids are pressuring you for money, and you can call out the behavior. When you call out the behavior and communicate clearly, that again gives your kids the words to use themselves when they find themselves in that situation. For example, it appears that you feel entitled to spend my money or to use my money for something you want. And I have told you I am not going to buy that right now for you. So do you feel entitled? That's a legitimate question. I mean, and I wouldn't necessarily lead with that question, but if your kids are pressuring you, that's a statement that you can reasonably say to them. You can also say, okay, you're repeatedly asking me for this. I've told you no several times. You're pressuring me. I'm feeling very pressured and I don't like this. Why are you pressuring me? Or you could use your boundaries. Stop pressuring me. I don't want to be pressured. If you continue to pressure me and ask me the same question, I will, whatever, stop talking, leave the room, whatever. So I want to hear from you guys. You can comment below. You can also email me directly at maria@lawschoolheretic.com. I want to know how you're handling this. I want to know what you are articulating to your kids to protect your financial boundaries. Okay. That's what I want to know. I also want to know if you have any questions about this, any more comments, if you have different strategies, and how you are teaching your kids about saving money and money management. I want to hear from you. Thank you so much.